Hi, everyone. Welcome to our talk today about leaving denial to live in reality. I am Dawn Wiggins, licensed marriage and family therapist, speaker, and writer, and I'm co-hosted today with the lovely Dagmar Gattel, SEO expert. And Dagmar, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me, Dawn. I am Dagmar Gattel, and I help entrepreneurs to really turn their expertise into global business. And I also have just a new business created together with my partner, Scott Johnson. And it's all about demand generation. And when we coming to the topic denial, right, it's interesting how connected it is with demand generation, because the more you are in denial, the more demand you have for denial. Like, at least that's what I find. So I'm very curious about the topic today because I was raised in denial. Both of my parents were in denial and lived in their reality in a very safe little German village environment. So they thought that's the world, and it's scary to drive to Frankfurt. And we never drove to Frankfurt as I was a child. We never drove anywhere as I was a child, because so then we could stay safe and secure in our little backyard garden. So it's interesting when you think about the topic and how it influenced how you lived your life after that.
Yeah, we could probably, thank you for sharing that, Dagmar. We could probably spend well over 30 minutes on this topic, especially considering the things that have been going on here in Florida in the US this week. There are so many ways that denial ends up touching our lives, but we'll stay as focused as we can. And if you have more questions or more interests, then always feel free to reach out to me after the show. So let's go ahead and jump in. I want to share with you guys that for me, one of the biggest signs that I'm in denial is when I'm saying the words, I don't know. So for all of you out there, that's a really good red flag. If you find yourself saying, I don't know about something, even though that may be your reality for that moment, because it is for me when I say it, it's typically an avoidance. An avoidance of knowing what the actual answer is, because if you know, then you might feel a feeling or have to make a choice or deal with a situation that you don't like. So this could be as simple as choosing where to go for dinner because you and your partner don't always agree on which kind of food that you like, or it could be as complicated as, do I stay married or not? And denial can be that simple or that complex. So the most important thing to understand is that denial is a function that happens in our mind that protects us from something that we don't feel like we can cope with or deal with. So, Dagmar, I heard you telling the story about your family, how they stayed in their safe town. And that was a form of protection. It was something that they understood and they could cope with that. Going outside of that felt not safe for whatever reason. So basically what we're talking about is denial happens when we feel overwhelmed, whether it's physically, emotionally, psychologically, and a part of our mind shuts down and starts closing off reality-based information. So we're going to look today at 5 ways to move out of denial and into reality, and then how to stay in reality also. And I'm excited to see what everyone has to say. So the first thing that is important to do to move out of denial is to create a safe space for your mind to be able to be open to new things. Because if your mind is overwhelmed or you're feeling overwhelmed, then your mind isn't going to open up to whatever information that it needs to be able to be in a state of reality. So creating a safe space means literally making the time or removing yourself from maybe an environment that has conflict in it or anything that's chaotic. If you notice that your mind is so loud that you can't hear yourself think, have you ever been in a room that's so loud you can't hear yourself think? Then that's a sign, hey, it's time to take a break, and that could be as simple as like taking some deep breaths and choosing to like clear your mind, or it may mean that you need to actually go like to a therapist or to a yoga class or meditate or step away for a day or two and create a space where you can get connected to whatever really is your deeper truth.
Yeah. What you just said, interesting, is because some of the denial is mine, and some of the denial is from my parents, and some of the denial is from my village, and some of the denial is just from perhaps the business environment I lived in. So it's interesting what you just said, to disconnect yourself from all of that and really find at the end the truth, right?
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give an example of how denial functioned in my life in the last 24 hours. So some of you know we were on vacation last week and we took our little one to Disney, and there were a lot of photos that were taken. And in one of the photos, a family member noticed that she had one red eye and one white eye in the flash. And because that particular family member has some medical training and some specific background in child development and ocular development, she raised a flag to me concerned that that could be a sign of cancer. Well,
Wow.
to say, I pretty much freaked out because at 7 p.m. on a Sunday night, there was nothing I could do with it. So, like, meaning there was no action I could take that would really have felt better. So I wanted to literally pretend like it wasn't happening until business hours today, when I could contact a doctor. And so what I had to do was, after I had had the conversations with the people that I needed to talk to, I needed to get quiet and say, like, okay, what is truth here? The truth is nothing's going to change between today and tomorrow.
Right.
And the truth is there's nothing that I can physically do between today and tomorrow other than to take care of myself, to take care of my little one, and deal with whatever comes up. And to know, to stay in that place of reality that says, even if she has cancer, which the doctor says he doesn't think she does, so no worries. But even if she did, that there's a solution to that problem. So even though I wanted to avoid the painful feelings, I wanted to not think about it, I wanted to get angry, I wanted to do everything else other than focus on what needed to be done, I really forced myself to get into that quiet space and say, like, okay, what's real here, instead of getting caught up in the chaos, you know, the scary stuff. So really creating that space so you can deal with what is real and what is not real, and you can filter those things out. That's
yeah, I think that's really important, because sometimes what we believe is reality oftentimes is not.
It's not. Exactly. You got it. So the second thing that we need to do if we think we might be living in denial is consider any feedback you might have gotten in your life that you're resisting. So I'm sure all of us have a lot of examples of these. I'm going to use kind of a lighthearted one, but through a lot of my adult life, I used to get the feedback that I was intense, air quotes. This, I believe, is code for bitch.
I think Geminis are intense.
How do you Germanize intense? Oh, you think Germans are intense?
No, Geminis, what we are. What is that?
German? Oh, Geminis. Geminis.
Geminis.
Okay, our stars are astrological.
Yes.
Okay. So I got that feedback that I was intense. I think that was code for bitch or for control freak, that kind of thing. And so for a very long time, I avoided that feedback because I didn't like it. And in facing that feedback, it meant I had to take a look at some behaviors in my life that maybe were not kind or loving. And it took me being willing to face that feedback to decide which behaviors I wanted to keep and which ones I wanted to replace. And today, I think that I'm a much less intense, although still somewhat intense, much more loving person. But if there's been feedback that you've been getting, and this happens for all of us about our own behavior, sometimes we get feedback about relationships that we're in or how we show up in our relationships. If we're avoiding that feedback, there's probably a reason. There's some pain under there. It's protecting us from something. So it's important to at least take a look at it. Feedback is just information. It doesn't have to be something that we make a life-changing decision about, but if we're receiving repeated feedback, it's probably a good idea to at least consider it. Resistance typically serves just to avoid emotional pain and not to help us. Resistance is a
you know what? It's depending on the type of feedback too. I mean, when you get feedback, is it like neutral feedback? Is it criticism? Coming to the topic we had a few weeks ago on the blog, like what type of Is it a judgment? So what is it, what you get?
Well, even if it is judgment, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have any basis in validity. So I find that feedback is something that is helpful. I strive to have enough humility to at least hear your feedback. That doesn't mean I have to internalize it. Doesn't mean I have to own it. Doesn't mean I have to agree with it, but to at least take a look at it. And when there's feedback that somebody gives me that I feel extreme resistance to, like, screw that, I don't want to hear it, that person's wrong, that's not true. Like, when I have that feeling come up inside of me that says, no, there's a lot more curse words going on in my mind right now. I think you get the point. That's a flag to me that there's something there for me to look at. It's because I'm having such a powerful emotional response.
Right, it's like a button pushed.
Yes. So even if the judgment is a criticism or a feedback, it's just information that can be worthwhile to help you move into reality and out of denial. Because there might, just because somebody delivers it in a way that's critical or judgmental doesn't mean that there's not some valuable piece of data in there that can help me grow or change or move out of denial into reality. Yeah, so the key thing about this is to pay attention to when we have internal resistance, because that's what the internal resistance, and avoiding that is what fuels the denial.
Interesting. So at the end, so more you avoid thinking about others' views, so more you go internally living in your own world.
Yes. And it's important, I think, to find balance. So again, it's important to process the views that we hear and then just make a decision. Do I, take what you like and leave the rest? Mm-hmm. So at least to hear, like listening and processing and responding in a meaningful way, so that we can decide what we like and then let go of it instead of pushing it down or pushing it away, or we can make a decision for ourselves, a choice about whether or not there is something there that's an action item for us. So the third thing to move out of denial and to live in reality is to listen to your gut. Now, there are a lot of different ways that people can identify their gut. So I listed several of them. It could be like a little niggling feeling in your stomach. It could be emotional unrest, or like conflict in your mind. Some people call it when your head and your heart don't agree. But whatever it is, it's your inner truth. And it's there. And so it's really important to tap into that and to connect to it. Typically, when I'm not wanting to listen to my gut, it's because I'm afraid of something. I'm afraid of an outcome, either afraid that it's not going to happen the way I want it to or the way I planned it, referencing when people used to call me intense, and that meant I was probably a control freak.
Right. Or the way you can control it.
Right. I don't like to feel out of control. So if there's something that comes up for me that I'm resisting, and I'm noticing that I have something inside of me that's saying, oh, listen up, but I don't pay attention to it, I ignore it, and I keep steamrolling forward, in the end, it usually bites me in the butt. And that's typically because I didn't listen to that voice. I ignored it because I was insistent on forcing an outcome instead of allowing things to flow in a natural way, or to using all the data points that I had available to me. I chose denial actively because I didn't like what reality looked like. So I ignored even my own inner truth about it. And there was some sign in there, whether it was, like I said, that little kind of butterflies in your stomach, whatever it is for you, but some sort of tension or disagreement inside of myself.
Yeah. Do you know what's dangerous is? What you just said. And I think of Germany, right? And I think of all these little villages maps. You have that here in the United States too, and I'm just not familiar with it. But it's really interesting that, because it goes from generation to generation to generation to generation. you don't recognize denial anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you have no clue that you live in denial. You really think this is reality.
Yeah. And so how that applies, that how you said that in the beginning of the talk, and how that clicked for me in regards to what was going on in Orlando this weekend with the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
People who go to the extreme place of whether it's an act of terror or religiously driven or any kind of bullying or terrorism on that level, that is a function of denial. It's living in a reality where I only believe this, what's in front of me, and not taking into consideration any other factors anymore. And what you said about how it gets passed down from generation to generation, culture to culture, that's how that happens. And it's not new. It's been happening for centuries. You know, what happened in Orlando this weekend, those shootings were so devastating and sad, but unfortunately this has been happening for centuries as a result of denial, because we choose to have sometimes a very small view of the world or of people or of spirituality or political views, and then we end up with devastating outcomes, and it's very sad.
Yeah, and it's dangerous, right? What you just said about Orlando, if you live in your own little world, you believe everybody else is your enemy. And I tell you and perhaps it's a funny example, right? But from the German villages, the villagers fight with each other. One village wants to be better than the other village, and they believe they are better than the other village. So it's interesting.
I love what you just said. If you live in your own little world, you believe everyone else is your enemy. That's tweetable.
That's tweetable.
But it's so true. I think that happens in every part of the world. What popped into my head was villages in Africa. It's the same. And then in this country, we had the Civil War, and there are still remnants of the Civil War that are happening. So I think that this is so true. When you live in your own world, when you choose denial over reality, then you have a lot more enemies rather than acceptance. So yeah. You're right on, Dagmar. Thank you for your tweetable insight.
You're welcome. It's the German village inside, I guess.
Your frame of reference, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the fourth step to leaving denial and living in reality is believing there is a solution and having an open mind to what it might be. Because earlier I referenced, if you're avoiding something, it's probably because you're feeling overwhelmed, and that whatever solution you think is out there, you don't like it or you don't want it. So this is the part where it's time to have an open mind and to have some faith that there is another solution that you might not be aware of. And that might mean asking for help or asking for input from somebody else, or being willing to take suggestions or advice from safe and trusted sources, not just anyone. But to be willing to look outside of the box and to find another way. Once we start getting some positive feedback and we start problem solving, all of a sudden reality doesn't seem so scary. For instance, going back to last night when I got that idea planted in my head that my daughter might be sick. Pardon me. When we started problem solving, okay, well, how could we handle doctor's appointments this week? And what would happen if she got a diagnosis? And how could we, then we started problem solving. Okay, well, now it doesn't seem so overwhelming. Now I can deal with what is. People get sick all the time. There's solutions out there all the time for all kinds of different diseases. So then when you choose to move away from that scary place of avoidance of, I don't want to deal with this because I don't think I can cope with it, now I can find solutions. And that's exactly what we did last night. And it's a much more peaceful place to be in solution. And there's a lot more solutions out there if you ask for help. Communities of people who have gone before us, who have experienced the same pains and hurts that we have. And that's why we do these there we are. That's why we have these blab shows and blog posts and things like that, is so that we can share hope, we can share solutions, which helps move people into a place of reality, into a place of acceptance. Oh, okay, there's other people out there that have experienced what I've experienced.
So Michael just posted, and I think it's so true what he wrote, that extreme commitments are consuming and sometimes add up to devastating outcomes. Like denial for sure feeds war. Denial for sure feeds any fight, right? Or feeds separation, or feeds anything negative, because at the end you take away the other person's right of their own view. When you're in denial and you believe your own is the only out there. So Michael wrote, people should always take a look at what they consider as an extreme commitment before judging or interacting in an extreme way. I think
wouldn't it be a beautiful world if that's what we all did?
Trying.
Yes, and thank you, Michael, for your comment there. Extreme commitments are consuming, and they're excluding. Typically, they in their very nature exclude others. And to have acceptance and tolerance means to be inclusive and accepting of others. Even if I don't agree with you, it means that I can practice acceptance and I can allow you to be who you are and who I am. And when we see these extreme acts of hate or intolerance, it's because of a refusal to accept others' views. And the reality of life is that this is a diverse place, and we all come from diverse backgrounds and experiences. And trying to control other people's experience of the world is always, like you said, Dagmar, going to fuel war.
I mean, what is this? The other thing, and I know today I bring a lot of up the German villages, but it's just, I lived there for such a long time, right? So the interesting thing is, if you're not with them and their denial, immediately you become the enemy to them. So it's very, very difficult when you are open-minded and you live there and you have another views or you have another beliefs as the environment you are in or the community you live in, right? And you don't share their denial, then you better move away, because you will have a hell of a life there.
Well, and that's what happens in the world of politics. That's what happens in the world of religion these days. That's what happens. Let's see, we're talking about the Second Amendment these days. You know, that most people who are vocal about these topics, like extremely vocal, like Michael mentioned, the extremist nature of it. If you no longer leave room for other people's views, it typically becomes unsafe. This is where we have bombings, where we have shootings, where we have threats of, overturning the Constitution, or, whatever that's, for in the United States. But there's certainly international examples of this. Let's see what Michael said. Balance is a necessity when conducting or interacting anywhere and absolutely mostly on worldwide platforms. Even if I disagree with someone, it's not always the end of my interacting with them. It would be beautiful if, and Brene Brown, who is one of my mentors, she just doesn't know it, but she talks about this all the time, that it's not that disagreeing is not the end of interacting with them, that it's the opposite of that, that wouldn't it be nice if we could all be vulnerable and be willing to accept other people and learn? She talks about a lot of this extremist view on things as a way to create certainty when there's uncertainty. So she sees it as a discourse feels threatening to people who have extreme views or who live in denial. That discourse feels dangerous to them because then they feel susceptible to somebody else's view, or to being judged that they will have interacted with somebody that has a different view. So it's kind of a lack of internal core strength, core, like inner security, that people who are that insecure that they can't even have a discourse, that level of vulnerability is so impossible for them, that they just create certainty, absolute thinking, so that they don't have to deal with vulnerability of even considering another idea.
But then it comes back to, Asala posted something too, it comes back to, do I feel loved? Do I feel appreciated? Do I feel respected? If I feel this, then I'm less willing going in my own denial. If I feel scared, if I feel disrespected, if I feel mistreated, I think I go easily in my own denial because it's safe. And there I feel like that's at the end the world I can live in.
What you just said resonated with me so powerfully, because there have been times in my life where I have spent years living in denial because I chose to stay really in that place of victim where I felt hurt, mistreated, unloved, not cared about. And I really was placing that responsibility on someone else to take care of those needs for me. And instead of learning how to feel loved, create connection, create a secure world for myself, and I couldn't figure out the solution, so I just chose to live in denial. And thank God I asked for help eventually. But that's really how denial functioned in my life for such a long time. And that was powerful what you just said. It really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Feeling insecurity.
Yeah.
So Zala says, great point, Dagmar. I remember once a friend told me about the story when there was a village where all people believed something that was wrong. And one person noticed and started speaking against it. And in the end, the story, this person realized that they were all drinking from the same well. So his or her choice to either drink or blend in, move away from this village and not get crazy or harassed. Yeah, there's so many stories of this through history, right? Like, we used to believe that the world was flat. And when it was suggested that the world was round, that was heresy. So denial is a lot about a mob mentality or a club mentality, an exclusive mentality. And so open-mindedness. Open-mindedness, believe there's a solution. Be willing to look outside the box, and that is a reality-based way of functioning. So the fifth way we're going to talk about today, Nikki says we also used to believe that any woman that was something was a witch.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the Salem witch trials, Nikki? Yeah. Wasn't liked. Oh, was a witch.
It's the same, the herbal remedies. Today, very famous in Germany. Everybody uses it. And I don't know how many hundreds of years ago they burned the women in Europe for that.
For practicing holistic medicine?
Because they thought it's witchcraft.
Wow, that's witchcraft. Ah, yes. That makes sense.
I think, let me just say something. I think everything what you don't know is scary. Everything what is new is scary. Everything what does not come from a seed we were raised with, right? Because nowadays we live in an environment where it seems everything is possible. Where 50 years ago you thought, didn't they say with the patents something, all patents that could be developed were already developed in 1859 or something? So they had to believe everything what could be found already was found. And it's just a limitation. I think denial is a limitation that makes it easy for you to not get crazy in the world.
Yes, denial is absolutely a limiting belief. And you are right on. So to break through that limiting belief on an ongoing basis, because as Michael reminded us, I think last week, that commitment and consistency and follow through are key to changing any unhealthy behavior. You're right, Scott. Denial isn't just a river in Egypt. We need consistency and commitment and follow through in order to stay in reality-based thinking and to not live in denial. So one of the best ways that I suggest doing that is continuing to use a support system and to watch out for any thinking errors. And that's because once we really start to challenge denial, and really the core of what we've been talking about, when we start to challenge our historical beliefs, the things that we grew up learning or being told about, that can become its own kind of scary, because you're moving into that uncharted territory. You're moving into uncertainty. Okay, I'm going to explore some other ideas, some other beliefs, depending on how far you're going to challenge how far you're going to stretch yourself. So in that space, it's really helpful to have a support system that can help you to recognize whether or not you're falling back into your old distorted ways of thinking, or if you're moving in a healthy direction towards acceptance, towards living in reality, towards love and tolerance. Because really, the whole idea of letting go of denial is the peace that comes with living in acceptance. And so a lot of times it can take a support system, a guide, a sounding board to help you stay grounded in that place of peace and acceptance while you're developing a new reality-based way of thinking. So make sure you surround yourself with people that you trust and people that you're willing to hear from if they notice you having thinking errors. Normal, we all have distorted thinking every day.
Thanks God, nobody's perfect.
It's right, exactly. So it's all about being willing to recognize it when it happens and being able to point it out so that you can switch it. It's only a thought, and a thought can be changed.
Absolutely. I just posted you on the house call, on the house consult. Do you want to share something about that, Dawn?
Yes, absolutely. So for anybody who's watching, thank you so much for being with us live and or watching the video on YouTube. If you would like to speak with me further about this topic or any other, please head to my website, dawnwigginstherapy.com, where you will find an on-the-house consult, a 30-minute free phone session with me to get to know each other a little bit and identify any goals that you might have for personal development in your own life.
Awesome. Perfecto. I shared your blog post too. So for everybody, if you want to check out the blog post, let me just share it again. You find there more content and more details. And also don't forget to follow Dawn, not only on Blab, subscribe to her Blab channel, but for sure on Twitter, because we all don't know what's happening in the future. We don't want to be in denial. There are always new social media and live video streaming going on. So please make sure you sign up for Dawn's awesome newsletter. Just you find it when you're on her homepage and just scroll down, because it's really unbelievable what somebody who is so beautiful inside and outside and so young can teach you.
Aw, thank you. Yes, I actually last week I asked you guys to sign up for my newsletter, and I did get some new signups, so thank you. And it was really a great feeling. I really have come to love writing them, and it's not a bunch of junk or spam. It's really stuff from my heart. So yeah, the newsletter is an awesome way to stay connected. Zala for saying. Inspiring to get in your inbox. It's true. Thank you so much, Zala. Dagmar, thanks for co-hosting as always. And I look forward to seeing you all next week on Blab at 3 o'clock for our Get to Be Inspired topic.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening live or to the recording. Bye.
Yeah. Have a great day. Bye.